Minister, Excellencies, distinguished guests, my fellow alumni of the Oxbridge Society. I'm delighted to welcome you to the Society's inaugural S.R. Nathan Hard Seats lecture delivered tonight by Minister Chun Singh. I believe it's the first time in probably a decade that we actually have the press invited to an Oxbridge event. And equally rare it is, of course, for the press to be here at the Pyramid Club. Members of the press, we welcome you, and I'm sure we can count on you for a balanced and fair reporting. Today's event is the fruition of a promise our society made to Mr. Nathan in 2016, following a special session he had with us. The promise we made was that we would take what he had shared with us to heart and act on it. In essence, Mr. Nathan said to us that we ought not simply to sing "Count on Me, Singapore," but also to mean it and to act it out. He wanted us, as privileged members of the Oxbridge Society, to feel a sense of duty to nation and to put nation before self, to stand up to be counted, to help our fellow Singaporeans, especially those in need, the poor, the dispossessed, and there are some of them in Singapore, and those with mental problems, as well as to make ourselves available as mentors. Why hard seats, you might ask, and we've got hard seats there. Well, at the 2016 session, we were all seated when Mr. Nathan slowly walked in. We all instinctively stood up, and I beckoned Mr. Nathan to the sofa that we had placed for him. Pointing to the sofa, he said to me, "This country was built because his generation did not believe in sitting on comfy seats," as he said, as you're all sitting on tonight, but on hard seats. Mr. Nathan was already ill at that stage, yet generously he spent 2 hours with us instead of the allocated 30 minutes. He regaled us with his experiences, sharing lessons learned from pre-independence. His breadth and sweep of history was spellbinding. But what concerned him most were the challenges of the future. The core DNA, he said, that had built Singapore must remain our DNA for us to thrive as a nation over the next 50 years. That DNA, he said, included hard work, resilience, the resolve to defend ourselves and our national interests, and a communal sense of thinking Singapore first, and what can I do to improve the lives of my fellow Singaporeans. I can do no better now than to play a short video extract of what Mr. Nathan said to us, and he allowed us to take this little video, and he knew that we were going to play it. The last frame of the video was Mr. Nathan's handwritten message to the society. I quote, "Always remember Singapore's interests and strive to make your Singapore even better in the coming years." That video explains why we as an Oxbridge Society felt we should launch a series to discuss, learn from, and execute initiatives to help the less fortunate in our country. Mr. Nathan wanted us to be salt and light. Salt is a preservative and also an enhancer, as we know, while light dispels darkness. Now to introduce Minister Chun. Minister Chun, of course, is a core member of our fourth generation. A former Chief of Army, Minister in the Prime Minister's Office, Secretary General of the NTUC, and someone who had the courage to say that if asked to serve as the next Prime Minister of Singapore, he would feel duty-bound to do so. Minister Chun has 4 special qualities and qualifications to inaugurate the S.R. Nathan Hard Seat series. First, amongst the fourth generation leaders, he knew Mr. Nathan well enough to be picked to deliver the eulogy at Mr. Nathan's state funeral, which he did with great aplomb. Minister, one language tonight will be fine. Secondly, a number of the challenges Mr. Nathan exhorted us to consider of the weak and downtrodden are issues that Minister Chun would have had first-hand knowledge of. Like Mr. Nathan, he grew up in a single-parent household in a 1-bedroom HDB flat. Thirdly, and we say this with pride, Mr. Minister Chun is one of us. He's a Cambridge alumnus. And fourth, like Mr. Nathan, Minister has had a baptism of fire working with the unions. In the spirit of today's event, Minister, I asked some of our younger members, do you feel you're doing enough for Singapore and for the less fortunate? Many said to me quite sheepishly, no. So, Minister, I asked them, why do you feel you're not doing enough? Why are you in your comfort zones and not putting back enough into society? I received a few answers. One from a young gent said, I've had to serve the nation for 2 years. I'm in a hurry to get on with my job and to make up for lost time. Can my female peers who have not done NS perhaps take on the mantle of putting back into society? From a lady member of our society said to me, as a thinking, patriotic woman, I want to do more. The current system perpetuates gender inequality. It is a male-dominated political system that believes in the antiquated notion that only men should do NS. When will this change? Minister, I'm reminded of a comment by PM Lee Kuan Yew and his view on this, and I quote Mr. Lee, I was keen to have our women do national service as Israeli women did, but Keng Swee did not want his new ministry to carry this burden. Presumably now, 50 years on, Minister, MINDEF is able to shoulder this burden. Third comment, a third person said, if stress, dispiritedness, and young people doing the ultimate act of forsaking their lives is a real problem, we should be grown up enough to talk about it and address it. And yes, I'm prepared to help. Fourth comment, apathy is not just something amongst us millennials, but has been fostered through generations of top-down governance, reinforcing a why bother attitude. So, Minister, a smattering of feedback comments. These are hard seat comments, hopefully not to be swept under the carpet, but we hope meaningfully addressed. Minister, it's therefore now my privilege to hear you address us. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you, to inaugurate the Oxford and Cambridge of Society of Singapore, S.R. Nathan, Hard Seats Lecture, Minister Chan Chun Seng.